Service is black and white. Hospitality is color. Service is focused on effectiveness and efficiency. Hospitality is focused on the quality of the experience.
I probably put in a meaningful 30 hours of work a week. But does that 30 hours of really dedicated, meaningful, committed, focused, non-distracted work for me creates more than I ever created in a 90-hour week?
It's not who dies with the most toys that wins, the most stuff. It's who dies with the best stories, the experiences. It's like that's how you really measure a well-lived life, Jonathan.
All right, back at it. Broken-ish, Jonathan DeCarlo. Always good to be with you, my friend. It's been a while, and it's been a while since we've been on camera together.
Indeed, it is a pleasure, and it has been a while since we've been on camera together.
Which is exciting. And so those who don't know Jonathan yet, Jonathan and I go back a long ways, good friends, but also someone I really consider a guide, a mentor, a historian on behavioral health. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time today just diving into the current realities of behavioral health, the inflection point that I think we may be in, as well as the evolution of behavioral health in general. And I think there's nobody better here to do that with than you, my friend.
I appreciate that.
So let's kick it off. Where do you want to take this conversation?
I think it's an interesting point in time for the behavioral health field as an evolving response to what people are experiencing in the world. I think our social contexts are evolving, and I think the treatment industry and the caring professions are evolving, not just because of technology, but certainly emblematic of the integration of technology into our social relationships and our experiences, and the types of things that people are experiencing and showing up looking for help with.
So you talk about experience, and I know this is something you and I have dived a lot into, over the years. Define experience as you see it at the intersection of behavioral health and experience.
So in our work in the group that I serve, the Red Point Center, we have what we call the Red Point Experience. And that is, the thing that for us is really the goal. It's the opportunity to rise to the need, the goal, the challenge, the service of what we're providing and delivering to, with, and for people. So in the caring professions, right, most people think of the service of most behavioral health opportunities as just the clinical care or the medical care. But there's certainly more to it, right? The experience of someone looking for help. How do they experience our digital experience, right? What's their interface with our website? What's their interaction on that first experience with, say, a chatbot on a website? What is the person's interaction and their experience both internally and externally, right? Internally, what's their emotional, psychological safety? What's the interaction to get Hegelian? Of course, we're going to talk about philosophy. What happens when their consciousness is intruded by something else, someone else's consciousness? That would be the Hegel part. But it's that intersection in those relationships. But in behavioral health, it's that journey, that picking up the phone when the admissions person responds to an inquiry, right? Someone fills out a web form, says, I need help. I'm looking for intensive outpatient counseling. I have these depressive issues and I'm really struggling to find an outpatient program. And I have a full-time job, but I really need more help than just my individual therapist. And they suggest that I reach out to you. What is that interaction and that relationship all the way through the different parts of a person's journey in both seeking, getting, and participating in, and then carrying on the growth of care in their own journey forward? What's their growth and their growth path? So all aspects of it. What's the experience of the people who are at the front desk in our, in our locations or virtually, the person that's sending that email. What is that staff to staff? What is that as an organization within a community, right? How does the organization facilitate experiences as a community partner? How do we interact with vendors? A quick example is we were recently doing some vendor meetings, initial meetings, looking for future service partners for some growth opportunities. And typically it would be a sales cycle, but our first meeting, we had a request. It's like, we just want to get to know you. We want to understand who you are, what you do, and how you interact with the people you serve, to help us understand if we want to have a more technical meeting around the particular service that they provide, right? Are they a good fit for us as an organization? Does our leadership team think that they can collaborate and help us with our integrity to the quality, the accountability to change, the commitment to the level of opportunity that we want to pursue, and helping people achieve their best in what we do every day, in every interaction, internal to the organization and external.
How I speak to it a lot is bringing care back into behavioral health care, right? So like that experience component, as you mentioned, goes so far beyond the services that we're rendering, right? Like that is one component. But what I like to talk about is like, how are we bringing hospitality and like really, let's call it unreasonable hospitality into behavioral health care. And I had a very interesting interaction with some of our clients, where once a month we go, and I and David, myself, Roman, a few of us, we go and we make dinner for the clients, and we just spend time with everybody and hang out. And one of the gentlemen came up and said, like, why are you doing this? Like, genuinely was curious about like why we would do that as owners of a company. And I said, a really simple way to think about it is we're in the service business. And so we're being paid to provide a service. And so like, that's why we're showing up in this way. That's why we show up with this kind of unreasonable hospitality mentality. That doesn't sound that great when it comes out of my mouth that way, but it's all of these additional factors that so many people don't pay attention to or don't think about, yet are, in my experience, some of the most impactful for those that we serve.
Well, it's interesting you bring that particular phrase up in the book from much fame.
Yeah.
From the very famous folks, who took 11 Madison Park, the restaurant, from, 50th best restaurant in the world, which was a good baseline.
Correct.
To number one.
Yeah.
And their experience in that is actually something our leadership team and our culture has really embraced and adopted. And it's a good expression of what we call the Red Point experience, that sense of unreasonable hospitality. And it is not without serendipity that some of the writing I was mentioning before we hit the record button was on that very subject of the intention, right? And so in the book, the author says, service is black and white. Hospitality is color. Right. To sort of differentiate.
Of course.
Service is focused on, effectiveness and efficiency. Hospitality is focused on the quality of the experience, right? In the depth. So for me in the behavioral health field, some still call it, and you had said service, right? It's human service, the human services. So keeping the human in human services, right? And being able to account for that. You and I have shared this definition in some of our work previously, that when we talk about the definition of recovery, right, our collaborative open definition is the restoration of one's humanity. So it's not about diagnostics. It doesn't ignore those, but allows an inclusive experience of whatever someone is trying to do to be their best self, whatever's stopping them or blocking them or inhibiting them or causing challenge from them from being their best self is the core of the definition of their recovery and whatever they're focused on. Is the service going to address all of those things? Probably not all at once. At least I wouldn't hope someone was going to try and solve everyone's challenges to humanity all at one time, all at the same time, all in one single experience, because I'm not sure it would hold for someone. I'm not sure
Right.
that would be the best thing for someone. which some of our colleagues might debate, right? A lot of people quote the very famous studies of the longer someone is in care, the better their long-term outcomes are. Most of the time when that's being quoted by someone, they haven't actually read the details of the studies. Because more often than not, it's people in residential care settings saying, well, the longer someone's in residential care, the better their outcomes. But the truth of the matter is the longer someone's in a full continuum of care all the way through outpatient
Right.
and actually resolves all of their treatment goals and their life needs along the way and gets to a place where the goal of therapy is not to be in therapy, and they step back from that, that's actually what makes that long-term outcome possible. So the outpatient continuums are actually some of the bigger components of the success in those studies. But to the point of it really is that to keep the humanity balanced and level and evolve in our response to what do people need to continue to be their best selves and grow with the challenges that we provide. But that service component being, it absolutely, to not have hospitality, to just be efficacious only is a shortfall, right? The practice of medicine has received incredible criticism for the commoditization of medical practice experiences, right? Doctors will even say, how were you trained, right? Were you trained just to be a diagnostician, or were you trained to be a practicing physician, which means you're treating a whole person? Even if you're specialized, you're still looking at all of what's happening in a person's life within the context of the care that you're trying to provide, the service you're trying to deliver. So even in me checking into the hotel that I checked into yesterday, right, there was a gentleman at the front door. I was waiting at the front desk. He said, oh yeah, the manager will be out to check you in shortly. Another person who's staying at this hotel came up and is clearly there for a while because they were expecting a package, and the manager said, oh, are you here to check in? I said, yes. And he turned to the person who he clearly knew and said, is there anything you need right away? I'd like to check this new person in first. And the person waiting said, yeah, take your time because this is going to be complicated. But yeah, I'm checking for a package. Stopped what he was doing. He said, can I have a moment? To me, went to the back, looked in the pile of packages, didn't see the person's name that he recognized, said, I don't see anything there, but just let me finish checking this guest in. Thanks for your patience, sir. I just wanted to see if I could help resolve her issue. So he was juggling these competing priorities.
Sure.
Right. But he did it in a way that was really genuine, that I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt responded to. I also felt like he did a good job trying to attend to another person's needs at the same time. And, it was very clear, it was a very busy hotel that I checked into, with a really diverse crowd. And I could see in the shadow behind me that a bus was pulling up, and he got on his little walkie-talkie and he said, the next set of guests is arriving. I need everyone in the front, please. And continued to check me in and asked me if I needed help with my bags. And I was like, no. He's like, are you sure? And I said, no, it looks like you got a whole train full of people, and about 50, young adults started to walk themselves in with their gym bags. And he said, regardless of what's happening, I need to finish my service to you first. So if there's nothing else you need, I just want to thank you for being patient while I took care of it. And it was really simple.
Sure.
But it was impactful because I was paying attention. Was I waiting for a few minutes before he got to the desk? Sure. But once he arrived and was able to be attentive, that experience was really different than often some of my travel experiences are different.
Yeah.
They aren't that.
So look, you've been in behavioral health 30 years? 30 years?
It'll be 31 years coming up here over the next few months.
Okay, so 30 years, and you started at a place like Bellevue, which
I started in working in severe and persistent mental health.
Right. So now 30 years later, we're here on a couch in 2026, and we're talking about how experience, right, is such a critical piece of what we do. For people that are listening that would say, how does that, right? Like, you need to get in there and work on the trauma. You need to help somebody with their heroin addiction and what they're doing to their family and all of that. Like, how do you justify the time, the energy, and effort that comes into creating that experience? And how do you balance that with the service delivery as well?
Well, it does go back to my early training. I mean, it was one of the first reasons that someone pointed me towards the helping professions. I had a different career in entertainment as a musician and performing and these types of things, and was looking to do something else. Had been afforded a lot of really interesting and fantastic opportunities, and got to do a lot of things I never thought I would do. And got to participate with a lot of people, and was looking for something different to grow into with no idea. And the first thing that I got told when I was pointed towards working with the population that I worked with in particular, severe and persistent mental health issues, people who had been institutionalized for decades, was the first thing you need to do is show up, because they just need you as a person. Everything else will follow. We'll get to that. But your job functionally is to just be present with them and be a person. They need to be heard. They need to be seen. They need to be listened to. They need someone to help them connect to the world when their sense of reality is distorted or impacted, by some of their challenges, or their experiences aren't that easy to track. Your first job is to stay awake, because I worked overnights, is to stay awake when the next part was to be a person first. And then we'll work on all the technical stuff. And with the population that I was serving, treatment plans were very long, drawn-out processes, to help someone over a 6-month period take 2 unprompted showers per week was like a 6 to 12-month treatment goal in a structured residential environment. And when I talk to some of my other colleagues, they'd be like, "Oh, I can't get all these treatment plans done. I've only got 45 days with this client, or 3 months." And it's like, our treatment plans go for months, and it's slow and deliberate, because we're actually helping people who have a difficult time connecting and perceiving reality, and participating in the world outside of their own domains with others. And I think that's still true today. Like, when it comes to the experience, that's what we're trying to ensure in things like the Red Point experience, is that we do everything that we can to be our best selves first. So in our practice of this opportunity, it's really, to look at it from the client experience, but we know from our own experiences that the only way to do that is to provide that to, for, and with staff, right? The organization has to have that experience. The staff have to have that. And then they can share that with clients, families, community partners alike. So I think this emphasis on it is really just to keep the foundations of human service relevant while we're chasing down billing codes and diagnostics and treatment plans and numbers. And there's a wonderful series of books back to, medical practice. One of my favorite sort of jokes about, it's medical practice, not medical perfection, right? It's a practice. You keep doing it over to get better at it, right? It's clinical practice, not clinical perfection, right? In some of the literature of some of the support groups out there in the 12-step world, it's oft quoted, but we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection is the direct quote from the Alcoholics Anonymous books. But I think the reality of that is that this practice of trying to hone experience is that we'll never really get there, because everyone's going to come in with a unique challenge. It's like, but can we work with that person to say, what can we do to provide the best opportunity? How can we provide that best experience? And with all of the emphasis of the last number of years in behavioral health on outcomes and measurement and all of these things, we've always had this information. It's not technology. It's not electronic health record systems. It's what information is going to help you track the delivery and the shared experience of the values you're trying to share with the person you're serving, right? That person you're treating, the person you're caring for or with. Hopefully not at.
Yeah.
But that's that thing, right? That thing of doing something at someone is different than doing it for them, and definitely different than doing it with them. We brought up unreasonable hospitality, and one of the things I was reflecting on from that this morning was, the idea of explaining to someone why, while you're doing something, why it's important, why you're choosing it to do a certain way. Why is this meaningful? Why do we do it this way? To help people access the intention so they can actually participate in it instead of just receiving it or experiencing something at them. I do much better when somebody tells me why something's going to happen. right? My nervous system relaxes more often than not. If you tell me we're going to go up to the top of one of the second towers in the Gaudi Church in Barcelona, Sagrada Familia, I'm going to panic because I don't like heights. But if you tell me there's an elevator that goes up and the staircase goes down, I'm going to say, I think I'll pass. All right. But if you tell me, oh yeah, the elevator goes up, the lift, but then I come out and find that the only way for me to go down is the stairs, my anxiety is going to stay in a very high state until I get to the ground floor with wobbly legs and white and looking for the bathroom. It's a real thing that happened. I speak from experience, but it's that piece. Like, so in our industry, I think it's really interesting when we talk about the helping profession, we talk about service and this experience, this, emphasis on hospitality, or at least the restoration of it. It saddens me that it went away, right? That we got into effectiveness as opposed to quality, right? And that doesn't mean that quality is better than effectiveness. It's different. It's inclusive. Or I can be effective in doing something, but it might not be high quality. I can eat McDonald's and it has calories and it has some nutrition, but is it as effective for my body to have something that was highly processed to receive my nutrients, and what cost will my body pay to process that food versus something that is, I bought at a farmer's market and I'm drinking local milk and, making a sandwich and toasting the bread myself, right? I'm choosing the ingredients and I'm choosing where I buy them and I'm choosing the quality of the ingredients that I take in. What I ordered for lunch,
Right.
really does matter. Right. It really does. And so I think being able to look at the challenges that we have as providers of services and balancing. I have to get so many things done, but I want to do them in a certain way. And I think there's not a tension. I think it's a both and. I don't think that it's a disjunctive proposition, but some people look at effectiveness and quality as two different things. It's like, well, one can help lead to the other. If I'm truly effective, there's a level of quality that I'm delivering. But to your point of your experience with the staff, if I don't take the time to get feedback, how can I ever know if it was ever actually received?
Right.
Okay. Same thing with outcomes. But if I overemphasize, the information and I don't understand the values of the context, is it really helpful?
No. I mean, outcomes is its own conversation, and I won't go down the rabbit hole on it. I'll just say, I mean, most of what we see externally facing are, we saw decreases in anxiety utilizing a standardized measurement from admission and 14 days in residential treatment and 28 days in residential treatment. And therefore, right, like, we must be a very good program. And, my pushback on that is, if you go up to the homestead for 28 days, I can pretty much guarantee that your anxiety is going to come down because it's silent and it's quiet and you hear things and it's a nice environment. People are cared for and all of that. I want to know what happens once you're back in town and once you're back at home and once you're back in real life and once you're back at your job and what happens 6 months later, a year later, 18 months later. And again, tracking outcomes long term, it's a difficult thing to do. But again, it's part of the story. Like, it's a piece of it, right? And a lot of people, I think, have used it as like, this is the story. And no, it's a real piece of it. And so I want to shift gears because I'm curious, as you look at let's talk broader industry at this point, like, where do you think that we're going right now? What do you think we're missing? What's coming down the pike? Talk about experience being a really important integrated experience in the provider community, but like, where are we going? What are we about to see?
I think there are a couple things happening simultaneously. Within society, there's certainly the rush of new technology advances with artificial intelligence. I think in the behavioral health industry, there are two sides to that. There's the side of integrating those types of technologies into business practices and into care experiences. And then there is the ramifications of people in their daily lives with technology's integration into other social contexts, and what happens when that happens in an imbalanced way in both those experiences. So I think there's a lot coming, and there's been a lot building for a long time. One of the things I think we're going to continue to see, and there's a lot of not just evidence, but there's a lot of experiences showing up, is I think we're going to see specifically the rise of addictive interactive disorders and process compulsive addictions on the rise. We see things like the rise of gambling addiction in youth across the world, escalating into incredible numbers that are being tracked and followed. I think people's experiences and interruptions with human intimacy and different types of intimacy as they develop relationships with technology differently are going to continue to show up. And that's been something that's been going on for many decades now. Millennia, truthfully, of any technology, but specifically with the rapid rate of change with the advances of the internet and with artificial intelligence and how rapidly things are progressing. With those, people's experience and biology isn't keeping pace to that. So the numbers of process addictions that are showing up, and I think are going to continue to rise. But it points to something greater. I think there's been growing existential challenge for people, the way that they make meaning and the way that they arrive at purpose in their lives has been showing up both in substance use and mental health in different ways. And I think technology is going to accelerate that. As much as we accelerate access to information and processing information, we're also going to accelerate people's dysregulation to that very same thing.
Why this increase? You speak of the increase in process-related addiction and the way people experience human or non-human intimacy, right? With the evolution of AI, technology, all this, like, why are you seeing this kind of wave coming?
I think people are struggling to maintain an awareness of the balance of what happens when you introduce this such rapid change with people. And we can focus in on technology in particular and use AI as an example. Just how quickly people will default to, I believe the expression you used earlier was outsourcing your thinking, right? Like trying to do that.
Right.
And what happens when we shift values so rapidly, and when something becomes a commodity and is valued, people can't value everything the same all the time, right? So if people choose valuing technology, if they value efficiency over quality, what happens in their relationships? If they would rather talk to their computer than another human being, if they would rather ask, an artificial intelligence agent how to deal with the situation than turn to another human being and say, how did you deal with this situation? Right? Neither is right or wrong, but when we start to shift our values, we have to make a choice. We're making an investment and we start to value things differently. I am seeing a lot of people overvaluing things that they're underprepared to deal with the long-term outcomes of, and ended up dependent and increasing, there's use, misuse, abuse, and dependence, right? We talk about this in substance use continuums, but any behavioral continuum has that process available to it. And I think that's some of what we're experiencing. And I'm not sure that family systems are ready. I'm not sure communities are ready. I'm not sure, organizations are ready. I can't tell you the number of conversations and webinars that I've been invited to as a leader in an organization on organizational structure of how to interface with AI in businesses, in behavioral health.
Yeah.
How are we teaching our people to interface with this tool, this resource? And so I think we're seeing a lot of these shifts, and because of the rapid progression in the pace at which some of our human process have been hijacked by micro and macroeconomic forces. And there's a whole lot of evidence of social networking and social engineering and marketing and all these things. We're being so exposed to these things, and in some ways made dependent before we're prepared to respond with a different set of values or ethics that guide us, I think we're going to continue to see these kinds of disruptions and dysregulations come up in people's lives. Is there a right way to interface with technology? Is there a certain ethic that works? Some would say none. Some would say everything. But somewhere in the middle is probably the wisdom of experience. So I think the rise of this is that for generations, we've not always done a good job of helping people how understand or build healthy relationships with technology resources, especially with the rapid rate of growth and change in them and investment and in society as a whole across the world, not any particular, not just the domestic U.S., but all across the world. There are probably only one or two cultures that aren't impacted by these things. And one of them is a protected island off the coast of India, which people aren't allowed to interact with. And every time you go near it, they shoot arrows at you because that's where they are.
All right.
Like they're isolated from all of that stuff. But everybody else is having to deal with it, whether they're actively doing it or passively, just as a part of society. So I think, things like how do we teach people how to value relationships with other people and things is, not a new challenge, but never been more important because of the rapid rate of change of technology and the widespread nature of how quickly it becomes adopted.
There's so many thoughts, but one of them is if we simply think about the concept of like the evolution of technology and how fast things are coming at us that we are just not prepared in any way for, and nor can our brains actually like comprehend and take into account how quick these things are actually happening, right? I mean, 20 years ago, there wasn't an iPhone, right? And now we're sitting here with, AI agents and all kinds of technology that is just, sci-fi 20 years ago. But also as a parent, I think about like the systemic issues that lead to a lot of these things, right? Is if you're a single parent working 2 jobs and you need 5 minutes to make your kid dinner, the easiest thing to do is hand them a phone at 1 or 2 years old, right? Because they'll be distracted, right? I got no judgment on that single mom or single dad that just got off of a double. I needs to make dinner for the kid before they go crash out or get to night school or whatever it is, right? That like this is actually a way to like get the kid 5 minutes so I can actually make the kids dinner, right? But the long-term impact of that is a lot of what, we'll start to see in our work, right? You on the teenage and adolescent side and us on the adult side. So I start to think like there's so many interdependent factors, right? That it's very difficult to live in the United States. It's difficult to make living wage. It's difficult to afford all these different things, right? There are so many competing factors. So when you say like we've got this wave of process addiction, gambling, which is accessible on my phone all the time, crypto, right? All of this, like what's the like next reasonable step for someone that's listening, or just in general, I guess if we think about it maybe as an industry, like what is the most reasonable next step for us to tackle, considering there's no way for us to tackle everything, but we've got to do something, it sounds like, to try to make some progress here.
I think one of the best things that people can do is to slow down just a little bit. Competition in the marketplace, competition in work, all those things come from a place of insecurity. But when we're working with people, it's one of the most foundational things you can do is identify, not to magically make people secure, but teach them how to secure themselves and then share that security with others. And if we slow down just a little bit, we might make different choices. If we weren't feeling so pressured, if that pressure wasn't external and internal, because it's both for most, right? It's
sure.
I've got 2 jobs. I got to work 2 jobs because I'm a single parent. I've got this, full responsibility of this loving child that I love, but I also need them to give me 5 minutes so I can operate a stove and a sharp knife. How do I do that? But I think being able to slow down and say, okay, what's most important right now, and how can I balance all of these things simultaneously? Sometimes just walking a little bit slower can be the starting point of having a different experience. So even in the adoption of technology, not rushing to it, but slowing down and thinking about, how do we want to adopt technology in behavioral health? How do we want to help people understand what the benefits and the costs will be, right? Where do we want to put our investments of time, right? The one thing that people can't recreate or manufacture on their own is time.
Yeah.
I can make more money, potentially. I can make more friends. I can ask for help, potentially. In both cases, what I cannot do is I cannot manufacture time. I can't make more of it all by myself. I can't do that. That's not possible. Some would argue, but if I have all the money I need, then I'll have all the time I need because I won't be busy doing all these things. But will I still be trying to move at a pace that's unsustainable? And will I miss the opportunity to respond differently? So slowing down, I think, is an easy way to do that. I was talking with a coworker about another coworker recently. And I said, yes, we should try an exercise where we have that person dial in a metronome with how fast they think they're working and experiencing. And then we'll take the metronome and we'll play it right next to that one. And we'll turn the metronome to the beats per minute of how we experience them. And we'll see if they line up, right? Because she operates at a different pace and so do I. And another person in her team might operate at a different pace and someone else might operate at another. So just slowing down and saying, all right, how can I work on attunement with whatever I value by slowing down just a tiny bit, just a little bit. Let's not be so fast and in such a hurry, to get where? To this magic place of security. I'm going to rush to get there. I'm going to speed in order to get to my appointment on time rather than leave slightly early and drive the speed limit.
Right.
Right. I created the situation myself. I left late. Therefore, I'm going to speed to get to my appointment. And while I'm speeding, I'm talking on the phone while I'm driving, which is not really advisable. I'm listening to music. I got a podcast going. I'm listening to a book. I'm trying to think. It's like, what if I just drove? And to your point, what if we just took someone, up to the homestead and let them experience the environment just for 5 minutes of silence for someone who maybe has never really been able to do that?
Yeah.
Their anxiety might lower. Their anxiety might rise though at first because they're so used to,
Of course,
the noise, right? So I think the slowing down just a tiny bit and being able to be intentional about the things that we do instead of just reacting to the world, responding to what's presented.
Yeah. So as we think of as leaders as leaders, at least of organizations, right, within the greater industry of behavioral health, right, slowing down allows for a bit of curiosity, allows for a bit, as you mentioned, taking in new information, right, looking forward, looking back, pausing, right, not having to make decisions so quickly. But also, right, if we're just constantly in that rapid fire pace of just dealing with crisis after crisis after crisis, growth, whatever it is, we may miss what's right in front of us so often, right? Simple solutions, shifts in culture, right? Little operational tweaks that need to happen. And I think that a lot of what I've continued to see is just this desire to put the next shiny object out front, here's the new therapy, here's the new technology, here's the new this, here's the new that, instead of being able, as you mentioned, to come back to and actually talk about what it's like to sit with somebody and share some space and to look into somebody's eyes and pause and actually listen to them and what that does versus, the $150,000 new machine that we just put down the hall that's what's going to do it. Feels like going so much back to what I consider like old school, right? Which is relationship. And then you speak to AI, right? Now there's a whole new relationship that people have. A lot of people do have an actual relationship with with a technology, which is it's a fascinating thing to me. And so it's like that slowing down piece. And you mentioned it, I think is so difficult for people because these things have become distraction. They've become ways to avoid whatever I'm actually feeling in the moment, and it could be simply, like you said, I feel like if I'm slowing down to breathe or go for a walk or pause or just sit silently or whatever, then I'm falling behind, right? Because the world, at least where we are in the US, right, is just the constant, right? Like if you're not hustling, if you're not grinding, if you're not working 12 hours a day, if you're not blank, right, then you're falling behind the guy across from me here and them and that company there, right? And it's like, how do we balance everything that's going on, right? And prioritize. And the last piece of that thought for me is you talk about time as this one thing. We can't manufacture more, we can't get more. But I really believe right now we're in attention, like attention being the most important thing. It's like, what am I putting my focus on in that moment? Not so much time, but like, how do we, really narrow in on where do I want my attention in this moment? Where do I want to be, up here physically and in that moment? And I think it just continues to open up a lot of really interesting doors with that technology now is not just human-based.
No, and I think it goes back to, the foundations and that, nothing is ever more than an elaboration of the fundamentals, right? That first lesson, Jonathan, be a human first, because that's what these people need first, is just someone to show up and be present with them. Stop trying to do at them. Don't do that. Just show up first. And then once they feel safe and trust you, then they might ask you for help, or they might be willing to accept the help you may want to offer. That's a discipline. It's learning. And again, discipline not as punishment, but to your point about attention. I think the foundations of disciplines are really the thing that can go quickly if we don't value them or we don't have shared value in them. Right? So what are the disciplines? What are the learning? What are the studies? What's the curiosity? What am I learning to practice? How am I progressing with those things? Attention being of massive competition.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it at one point while we were talking. I was trying to remember when this term was first introduced to me in behavioral health, but it's such a commonplace term now, especially in the role that I'm privileged to serve in. I never had to evaluate the tech stack before, because tech usually was like the telephone,
Sure,
the fax machine,
yeah,
the mimeograph,
the mimeograph,
right? The technology, right? Somebody asked me recently, I was doing a demo for an electronic health record system. And they said, what's your relationship with electronic health record systems? I said, I go back to my first electronic health record was performed by an IBM typewriter that was electric. I went from handwriting to typing my notes. And I had to get permission and training to type the notes correctly because my handwriting was so terrible and illegible. And I refused to slow down and have some learning capacity challenges with penmanship that I've had since childhood. And never took the time or discipline to do anything about. But my electronic health record relationship goes back to the typewriter, right, and the evolution of it. But to measure the tech stack, like how many pieces of technology, I was really trying to think a few moments ago as a passing thought quickly of how many emails I get on technology-based solutions to things that I don't actually need a computer to do, that I actually want in our work a human being to do with supported efficiency. But I want a person to do that. Someone was trying to convince me recently at a conference that we needed to enhance our admissions process with all these technology tools. And I said, the most important thing for us is that a person speaks to another person in order to have their questions answered, in order to help them guide their experience, in order to ensure that we are an integrity fit for their needs, that we can understand what they need, and that we're actually a good fit to help serve them. And then if not, to direct them to resources that are better or more appropriate for them. It's the most important part of our admissions process, is that connection from a human being to a human being, for someone to be present, for someone to listen, for someone to ask questions, for someone to do that. Now, does that mean that, an AI bot can't do that? It can do it, but the quality of our experience and the quality of the relationship, as we talked about experience earlier, is the beginning of that. So when I think about the tech stack and the fact that someone is actually actively trying to get a meeting with me to present me with the solution, which will evaluate our employees before hiring to see if they're a good fit for the organization. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but I don't know if it's the right fit for our organization, if this is the right time, and if that's the way we want to go about it.
Yeah.
I know it's a demonstrated wonderful process that has value, but I still need to work with that vendor and say, is this the time for us to do that? Is that a resource? And to our leadership team, is that how we want to do this? Just to take time to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than say, there's a more efficient way. How can you not be doing this? Everyone's doing it. That when people say that, I get a little leery.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, I want to be able to critically think. I want to be able to critically learn. I want to be able to have choice over discipline. Although it's a podcast, I have a little intent bracelet that came from a team building activity of one of our team came in and said, pick a value that you want that's most important to you. And mine says choices. No surprise. I see you smiling. I like my options. Because at one point in my life, I didn't feel like I had any, that I really didn't. And so it's something that I cherish, is choice and being able to have opportunity. So being able to me as a value, that's important. So being able to offer people choices about things, about learning, about attention, about all of it. It's like, the options exist, but do I feel like I have enough information to access them and access them the way that I want to?
Yeah.
Or the way I want to help someone learn to do it differently. Themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating conversation in and of itself, which is, and you know this because we've actually worked together before, and, filling up a calendar, for example, is like a really easy thing to do, right? There's always somebody that's vying for something, and, an email inbox is constantly going off, and you're right? I mean, you probably get a dozen emails a day from people trying to solve problems that you don't even have with technology and other things. I just spam block, right? But where I've gotten to over the past probably 6 months is where does my attention actually need to be to move the needle on blank, right? So if it's family, like, what does that mean, right? Like, what is showing up in that way mean with work, right? Like, I can look at this company and be like, oh my gosh, I have 96 things to do, and probably 3 actually move the needle on something, right? And so it's like how to not be distracted, and to be able to find and to create space to think and to be creative, and to actually pause and just go, is what I'm about to embark upon going to create a meaningful interaction with myself, with another human being, with the business, with whatever it is? And what I have found, and I said this to Sasha recently, and hopefully I won't offend anybody, around these parts, but it is what it is. I probably put in a meaningful 30 hours of work a week. Now, some people might be really fucking offended by that, right? And don't get me wrong, there's people here that are working 70-hour weeks, right? And you and I have both worked 90-hour weeks before, and right? It used to be a badge of honor at some point. It's no longer a badge of honor. But does that 30 hours, right, of really dedicated, meaningful, committed, focused, non-distracted work for me creates more than I ever created in a 90-hour week, right? So then it's like flowing in this world where there's a new AI solution, and oh my gosh, and should I look at that? And I got to do this, and there's all these things going on. It's like, how do we stay focused on what the goal is and the intent? Where does my attention need to be right now? And blocking out, right? I think that's one of like the most difficult pieces to do, is to actually block out, is to say no, 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 right? And then you go like, I don't have anything on my calendar tomorrow. Like, what should I do in this moment? And maybe that's I spend some time with my wife. Maybe that I go for a walk. Maybe that's I do this. Maybe it is I get into a 4-hour session of just undistracted work that I'm going to just knock out. But many people would be today like, what do you mean? You know, what do you mean you have space? What do you mean you have time? What do you mean, right? Like, it's no longer a badge of honor to be like, oh, I'm so busy I can't blink. It's somewhat offensive today.
It's come up. I was talking with a colleague recently, and one of their team constantly says, I'm so busy. And this person commented to me, I said, do me a favor. Next time you're interacting with this other person, would you politely say, everyone's busy? Everyone's like, everyone, woe is me. And it's like, yeah, everyone's cooking. I think one of the things that is necessary to teach sometimes, but at least helpful to point towards the value of. And we're talking about slowing down, and this is akin to that, as being able to take space, being able to have measured intention, being able to thoughtfully approach something as opposed to just, fear of missing out on everything, that focus. But it brought out in Patrick Lencioni's famous book, The Advantage, his 6 critical questions, right? Why do we exist? How do we behave? Right? How do we measure success? Who must do what right now? Right? And those are really important questions. So knowing what I value and why, knowing how do I want to act, how am I going to measure that action? How am I going to evaluate it? Like, how do I deal with competing priorities or competing agendas or different attention spans? How do I do that? And I was thinking of those things because a lot of times I think as people, we may not always do our best in sharing that with those around us. And not just appreciation, but really shared whys. Why do we do this? Really being clear, right? But then how do we behave? Sharing that as well.
Yeah.
Right? How do we measure success? Sharing that as well. Not just sharing when we're successful, but how are we going to measure? Like, how are we going to know that we are successful and share that? And I think the who must do what right now is one of those ones that in the moment often doesn't get shared. But I think it's just as important too, because that's one of those things, especially in the behavioral health world, when we are presented in our service opportunity, to its core, we are here to serve human need, human growth, human desire, human want. I don't see humanity stopping needing, wanting, or desiring things anytime soon. But being able to say, when is that satisfied? How do we want to satisfy that? Right? Coming to that place. But, I dial back to the simplicity of, am I aware of myself? Am I aware of what are my strengths and my liabilities, my growth areas? How, with that awareness, do I share that with other people?
Yeah.
Right? We often call it vulnerability. I'm going to share these things with you. I'm going to be vulnerable now, Chris. I'm going to tell you that I have insecurities.
I'm ready to receive.
My insecurities are there's not enough pizza in the world for me to eat right now. And that I don't have enough money to get all the tacos that I want to engorge myself with. But like, in all seriousness, the truth of it is, and I poke fun at myself and my passion for pizza, my passion for tacos. But it's about the experiences. It's about the shared experiences. Right. And for me, it's just as important who as how, right? Who am I with? Do I spend those opportunities with people who have not the same values, but shared sets of
aligned,
attuned to at least something in the general library shelf,
same direction.
Yeah, maybe not, but can we at least, we don't have to be on the same page. Could we be at least in the same Encyclopedia Britannica year set of things? Because that will probably allow us to then choose how we want to grow together. But that's
Encyclopedia Britannica. I love how you're bringing that into the podcast. I mean, that That shows some age between the two people on here today. Yeah.
Somebody came into my office recently and I have a dictionary on my bookshelf, one of my bookshelves. I have books. I read paper books.
Yeah, me too.
I don't just listen to, because I don't always learn best by just listening. I listen to a lot of podcasts and I listen to a lot of YouTube and things like that, but I prefer to read books. I learn better that way. That's my learning style. And I know that about myself. I retain more when I do. And I interact with the material differently than just hearing somebody read to me. I don't have the type of experience I want when I do that. But somebody noticed, they said, I can't believe you have a dictionary. And we were joking about where it came from. When I first got sober, trying to understand all these words in this book that was written in the 1930s they were talking about these things, humility and all these big words that someone would think that I would know. But I got into the habit of buying dictionaries from every decade to see the change of meaning of the usage of words over time. So when I was reading a book, and so that the dictionary in my office happens to be from the 70s. I just know that because I had gotten into pursuing books, because I'd read a book from a decade and I'd want to understand what it meant. And I wouldn't assume that I knew what that word meant or even how to pronounce it. And so we were joking about a dictionary, right? Someone would say, well, just ask Claude or ChatGPT. And it's like,
sure.
No, I want to look up the word. I am a very sense-driven and sense-experiencing person. My wife says I'm sensual, not just romantic sensual in the romantic or sexual connotation, but I interact with the world physically very intensely. I love taste, I love smell, I love sound, I love the feel of a book. That particular dictionary has the old kind of cloth pages that feel like silk. They're not. They tear super easy. But that dictionary is incredibly meaningful to me. And I look it up every once in a while. I'll look at the word in their words that we use now in contemporary modern language that aren't in that book. But if I'm reading something from the 70s and I want to go back and share that meaning with someone, I turn to the dictionary and said, here's what the dictionary says. And the definition of humility is not the act of being humble. It's not really a definition. But ChatGPT might tell me so. Right? The quality of the information that I feed myself is really important. That's something that's definitely been a part of my personal recovery journey, but my professional journey as well. And it's something I try and share with those that I collaborate with or serve. It's that the quality of the information is just as meaningful as the amount and the type. So back to Lencioni's questions. How do we behave? How do we measure success? How do we do that? Yeah, all things I can't just subjectively determine on my own. But to the fundamentals, the human experience, how do I share that? How do I value that? How do I value a technology that's a part of my human experience? I will go on record as saying right now in my life, I do not have a ChatGPT nor Claude subscription that I personally pay for or access at work. I ask other people for those pieces of assistance when I need them. I haven't gotten to a place where I'm ready to interact with it yet in that way, to just turn to it. Doesn't mean I don't use those resources connected to other sources, but I don't pay for a subscription. I don't have a Claude account. I try and do a certain balance of certain manual tasks myself. And then I ask others who are really into those things, hey, can you have your agent fix this up for me? Or can you ask it this question? And a colleague was, doing something that I'd been working on for a couple of weeks. And they said, yeah, chat did in like an hour, got it like 80% of the way there. And I just needed to tweak it. And I said, yeah, I still am going to go through my manual process, because the act of doing it is just as important. Because while I'm listing a crosswalk for policies and procedures, I'm reading all of ours and I'm thinking about the ones that we have. And I'm thinking about the experiences that we don't have protocols written down for, but I know that we do, and we do well. We probably want to document those. Chat's never going to know what those are. But I am, as a human being, experienced in serving with the teams and watching the process. And as we embrace this particular growth opportunity in our work, I really look forward to it. But someday I will. I can't wait to build my own agent at work. It's a project that we're working towards, of the integration of agentic support in our learning, in our development, in our organization. But we're starting with a values-driven approach. How do we want to interact with these things? How do we teach these systems the things that we want to have it learn first? How do we want to have that relationship? So at the core, I think the human services, no matter where we are, it's always, it's about relationships to things, to ourselves, to other people, to objects, to processes, to systems. So what's the quality of the relationship? My grandfather had a great one-liner I was thinking of earlier. And he said, it's not who dies with the most toys that wins, right? The most stuff. It's who dies with the best stories, the experiences. He's like, that's how you really measure a well-lived life, Jonathan. And I was like 5, getting this lesson that really was at the root of it's the experience that matters. And it really does matter.
It does. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap this up with that quote, which is beautiful. And I'm glad that you and I both have taken the time to slow down and look one another in the eye, and not through a phone, not through a screen, and take the time to catch up here a little bit and just have, again, a human interaction based on the way we're experiencing the world today. It feels very important to me as we continue this work that these types of conversations are what's important and lead to memories and stories and everything else as we come back to take a look at our life at the end and who has the best stories versus who has the most things. So thank you for coming out today. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thank you for the opportunity. I definitely really enjoyed it. Great to reconnect. Great to be in person. Great to do this. Great to be on camera. Great to be in this organization that was once a notion and is a reality, helping those who are seeking that help in their lives transform.
And we're both back. Now we're both in Colorado too.
Indeed.
So
indeed. Well,
many more to come.
I have to say thank you for the opportunity, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all the people that feed my life, because I'm just a student of their learning. So, certainly the team at the Red Point Center, the teams at Ava Health, my colleagues, Dan Griffin and Sophia Murphy, and at the core of it for me, as my CEO pointed out, he saw my wife and I at dinner the other day, and he said, your wife really grounds you. You're like totally different. It was so cool to see you just be that calm and relaxed with Ronnie. So at the core of it, cross-check.
Shout out, Ronnie.
So thanks for the opportunity, and I look forward to more.
For sure. Yeah, so hard truths and real conversations and sparks of possibility in a world that's a little broken-ish. We'll see you next time. Jonathan, shout out Ronnie for keeping this guy grounded, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.